Gandhi and Nehru Gandhi,
Oh my God.
and
Guys,
amazing.
we're live by the way.
Oh,
We were just talking because I'm convinced that Monasen is just using a Zoom background because it doesn't look real. Am I the only one who feels that way? Well, we are jumping back on. So you may have seen the video that we just taped about baby food, toxic metals, and all that good stuff. However, since we have her, we're keeping her for a second because this is another question that has come up a lot at Twiniversity. So more and more of your parents and your friends who might be healthcare workers or essential workers are getting their vaccines. As the world is becoming vaccinated, does that mean that we could enlarge our bubble to include them without risk? Does that mean that our kids could go to their babysitting grandparents once again and I could just have a night even if I'm still quarantining at home? What does it mean after you get the second dose? Do I need a mask? Do I not need a mask? Can I get on an airplane? What exactly it is? So I quickly asked our favorite Dr. Manasa if she could just stay on with us for a few more minutes and give us the inside scoop. Okay, for realsies, I really personally want to know because I'm confused. I know that my mom got her second dose yesterday. What does that mean for her? So does that mean that do we have more freedom or what? So tell us about your personal experience and then of course your professional opinion because you're a fancy doctor and probably still paying your med school bills every month.
not not fancy, but I am a mom of twins and have, both sets of our parents live close by, and we haven't really interacted with them too much. And so I think there's a few things to kind of dissect here. So number one is the vaccine itself. So in general, in general, after the second dose, so you don't have full immunity right away. It takes time. So remember, the way a vaccine works is that you expose your body to something, in this case, parts of either a bacteria or a virus, to get that body to make a response to it. Then that way, when you do come in contact with it, it's revved up, it's ready to go, it can fight what it needs to fight. That's how vaccines. So there's some lag time, right? Because you introduce it and it has to kind of start working. Like your body has to start producing that material called antibodies to say, okay, next time I see this thing. So that kind of lag time is about 2 to 3 weeks, what I've been reading in the literature. So that means after the second dose, it's not just like that.
Okay.
It's at least still to get maximal, kind of optimal immunity.
Okay.
It's at least a few. So 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, certainly before you can feel like, okay, I'm good. Okay. The other caveat is that it's not 100% effective, right? It's not 100%. It's very effective.
Okay.
In that absolute value, that 95%, whether it's, Pfizer or Moderna, and now Johnson and Johnson with their one shot. And so there's always some risk. It's kind of what we would go back to when we talk about, the baby foods and the plastic. You can't mitigate that risk all the way down to zero unless you physically stay in your home and don't see anyone for a long period of time. That takes your risk down to zero if you're like by yourself in that for a long period of time. So what can you do to meaningfully reduce that risk? So things like the vaccine, social distancing, washing hands, wearing masks. That's why we're always talking about those things, because you're not taking it down to zero, you are decreasing it. Okay, so then that brings you to, okay, well, 2 weeks after the dose, I am 95% protected, the grandparents. What do you do? Okay, so when we talk about what it means for you specifically and what it means for our country, those are two different things.
Okay.
Right? We have to continue to do all of these measures. It's not like you can just immediately say, okay, I'm one of the ones that has been fully vaccinated. I can go back to my pre-COVID life.
Okay.
Well, because our country is not there yet. So we don't have what we call herd immunity yet. We can't just go back to the way things were because not enough of us have that immunity. And that's really important to understand, because we can't just go back to pre-COVID life yet, unfortunately. Herd immunity, if you've heard Dr. Fauci talk about this, on, different various outlets,
Everywhere.
really like everywhere. He's
Literally.
great. 85%. I mean, that's a high number. You need to vaccinate the overwhelming majority of our country before we even think about pre-COVID era. So we're kind of in that middle zone. So that I'm getting to answer your question now. It's like, okay, well, what do you do? There is no specific answer, right? It's what's best for your family. So I can kind of talk about my own family. Right now, we are all vaccinated. My parents and my in-laws are going to get their second dose. So they haven't been fully vaccinated. My husband and I are fully immunized because we were healthcare workers, so we got it back in December. But we still wear masks. We're fully immunized. We go into the hospital, we see our patients, and our kids go to school, in-person school. They're wearing masks. So I feel comfortable with that. It's kind of my personal decision, and I feel comfortable with that because the rate of, just as a FYI, the rate of kind of in-school transmission is really low.
Okay.
Positive cases are coming from the community.
Okay.
So there's not a right answer for everybody because everybody's life looks a little bit different. My kids go to school, so they're exposed to a lot of other people. They're mitigating that risk by wearing masks and social distancing and hand washing. I and my husband go to work in a hospital. And so again, my risk is a little bit different than maybe yours or anybody else watching. So I think understanding what is best for your family and that balance of mental health and what that kind of looks like for your grandparents and for yourself and for your kids. So for example, for us, we've kind of decided that even after the vaccine, with our grandparents, that we will continue to wear masks.
Okay.
But we'll get together. We'll wear our masks in the house. And for us, everyone's vaccinated. Remember, the vaccine protects against severe illness.
Yeah.
So I feel better, right? I feel better that, okay, my parents, my in-laws who, we love these people so much, right? They're our own parents. We want them to be safe.
Yeah.
And so you are decreasing the chance that they're going to get really sick because we know that this virus attacks, people in that age range much more aggressively. And so you can feel better from a mindset that, okay, I'm decreasing my risk because I am vaccinated. They're vaccinated. Everyone's feel like we've got antibodies, but the community's not there yet.
Yeah.
So, and even if out into the community, again, I can't quit my job. My kids are still going to school. So we still have some risk. And so in order to mitigate that, I don't feel comfortable yet taking off the mask.
Okay.
And we know that the mask. And so that for me is how I approach it. And I think it's really important to understand for everybody that masks and social distancing and, I like to call it physical distancing because it's truly physical distance. Hand washing and mask. I mean, they're still the staple.
Yeah.
So we're not quite there. People have probably heard about bubbles and like quarantine bubbles and what that means. The issue with that, and there's no problem with that, but there's a lot of rules that have to take place in those bubbles, right? So if you're going to say, I will have with my family, just know that everything you do or that family member or that friend does is also a risk.
Yep,
and so you have to kind of
your bubble's expanding without you even knowing. It's true. So Manasa, do you think that it's safe to say that if my parents are vaccinated and I have children that are in school, that once upon a time we hadn't even seen them, right? They were in their neck of the woods, we were in our neck of the woods. Do you think that it would be safe for like our parents to go on a walk with our children now and maybe have less of the physical distancing, but still be masked and still do the hand washing? Like, do you think that maybe if they have the second vaccine, that we can start to incorporate them into our world? Because like you said, with the emotional issues that are having, they're getting detachment issues from their grandparents, and our grandparents, I feel horrible for them that they can't see these people, especially for people with newborn babies and they never got to hold their grandkids for the first time. So do you think that it would be a possibility, depending on the risk exposure for us, that if they have the vaccine, we could loosen the belt a little bit, but certainly do not eliminate it.
Yeah, so I think that's where, because we have to remember the vaccine. So I'm vaccinated, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it protects against severe illness. We don't necessarily know yet. Right now, it doesn't show to decrease transmission, right? So because it's 95% effective, I go to the hospital, I may see COVID patients. And so for me, knowing that, well, I'm protected against severe illness,
Yes.
but pass it on.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that to me is enough to say, I don't feel comfortable, not doing all of the things. Now, completely isolating and being in like lockdown, I think that I think that we can be past that.
Okay.
And so again, can they go on a walk? So for our family, what we've decided is we can go on a walk with masks on, outdoors,
Okay.
6 feet apart. They can still, there is something just so powerful about physically seeing your grandparents,
Absolutely.
and, I would go again, I can talk about what I'm doing specifically, but, a very quick sideways hug with, and I know there's a lot of literature now about the double masks. We like to buy the KN95s because they just offer more protection, for example, all of those different things.
Yeah.
I'm definitely on of it because I work in healthcare. So
Oh, of
my
course.
perspective is,
Of course.
and so, does that power of a touch where, your children are wearing masks, everybody's vaccinated, and there's a sideways hug for that split second, that emotional connection that you feel.
Yeah.
Is that like for me, it's all about balance. It's like, what is the risk and what is the, and so if I feel like, okay, I can do this one thing,
Yeah.
I just have to be okay.
Yeah.
You have to be okay with decisions. Because there is a balance. There's a balance there. And so that touch, that feel for a short period of time feels like, to me and my kids and my parents, an okay thing to do once they're vaccinated. Doesn't mean everybody rips off their masks and can just go back to regular life. No,
It's not
but we
frat
will
party time. We're gonna eventually
I
get to frat party time. Monica, we had a question that came from YouTube, and it said, "What about grandparents that refuse to get vaccinated?" So this mom is expecting in June, and they have made a very conscious decision to only allow vaccinated people to see the babies. Do you think that's a smart idea? And how would we either go about educating the mom or educating the grandparents who are like, absolutely not. What's the point of us getting the vaccine?
Yeah. So two different questions.
Mhm.
Um, it's interesting, right? Newborns and elderly, where my screen's over here, are actually treated very similarly. And here's why: because they are the most vulnerable
Mhm.
to infection. Babies, because they just don't have the immunization, like they don't have the immunity, which is why we always talk about breastfeeding for babies and the kind of benefits, because mom has the antibodies and she can pass on. So that's why we talk about breastfeeding in terms of immunity.
Okay.
And so elderly is kind of the same. They're really vulnerable to infection. So the people who get vaccinated, apart from COVID, right? Think about, like, take COVID out of the picture. The people who get vaccinated are our babies. They get vaccinated a lot in those first few years, to protect them
Yeah.
against and really cause harm, including, severe illness and death. And the other group of people who get vaccinated routinely against, pneumococcal kind of bacterial infections, against pneumonia, are the elderly. Okay. And it's because they work very similarly. So the question actually is talking about two different groups of people. What do I talk about with my grandparents and what do I do for my newborn? But they're actually quite similar in the way that they're. And so I do think it's a good idea for people to protect their newborns as a pediatrician. Again, even outside of COVID, if I see a newborn, I'm always telling parents to be, pretty protective, especially in that first month of life.
Yes.
Particularly in the 3 months, but really, really month where they don't have those antibodies at all. So hand washing, limiting exposure, those are things that we say anyway,
Yes.
like apart from, and so I think that's really important. So certainly having people who are vaccinated is helpful, but remember, I just said it
Yeah.
don't know yet. Right now, it does not necessarily show that it decreases your ability to transmit,
Yeah.
meaning that I can still transmit it to your baby. So I think that also has to be taken with a grain of salt. So more than the vaccine is limiting exposure, masks,
Yeah.
physical distancing, vaccinated people. Does that make sense for
It
seeing
does.
babies?
So the way that we should really look at the vaccine is that this is going to be this is the beginning of the end of the long game. Because what we're trying to aim for is not what's going to happen 10 days after our second dose. What we're going for is the herd immunity where we could just annihilate this virus and we don't have to worry about getting it and giving it to people. And although we probably won't die from COVID, and by the way, it is not just the elderly. If you have underlying health conditions, for those of you that are watching, and people are saying, well, why am I going to get the vaccine? Like the YouTube said about her parents, you can't think of the vaccine as a get out of jail free card. You have to think
Yeah.
of it as another mask. This is another thing I'm doing for you, you're doing for me, so we could just have this go away into the netherworlds.
Yes.
I got it
Yes.
now. I think I
It's
literally got it. Do you ever, I don't know what channel you watch in the morning. I watch CBS, and Gayle King, every time she interviews somebody, she interviews them with only her personal interest. And this I
yeah.
feel like I just did.
But
I
it's
just
true.
Gayle Kinged this interview with you.
You did. You kinged it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that it's not the magic cure right now, unfortunately. Like it's not the cure to coronavirus, like in the big picture, long haul. It is another tool
Okay.
in our toolbox that we are doing. And and we don't, like the flu every year we get vaccinated. We're mandated as healthcare workers to do it. So, there we may have to get a coronavirus vaccine every year. We don't know. It's too early to know kind of how long that immunity lasts. And so there's a lot of research going on about that. But I think everybody, get vaccinated when you can,
Yeah.
wear your mask, still physically distance, wash your hands, do all the things, because those are simple things that you can do.
Yeah.
It's not like a major, like big thing that you have to prepare. Put on the mask, just stand far apart. These are very easy things that we can all do. And if we all do it,
Yeah.
I keep saying this, and
Well,
just
Manasa,
keep,
I'm telling you right now, we're already have some people of why is this on Twiniversity? Why are we talking about vaccines? This is against Twiniversity. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm actually pro-vaccine, and and therefore Twiniversity is pro-vaccine. If you are not pro-vaccine, more power to you. However, just understand that because of my personal issues, and for the record, and Manasa, I don't know if you even know this, when my babies were born, I had already decided that we were not going to vaccinate the children. I'm that kind of crunchy mom. So I spoke to the neonatologists ahead of time and explained that we did not want to do any vaccinations. And it was actually while I was in the NICU that things greatly changed my mind. And I realized that I live in New York City. The pollutants that are around me right this very second of just sitting here are certainly, there's a lot more things in the air that I'm breathing than the things that are going to be put into my arm. And just speaking to my mother and her stories of being a little girl when there were diseases that were running rampant through her friends and her losing friends from diseases that we can now vaccinate from is absolutely outstanding to me. And I know that a lot of people are really concerned about the speed that the COVID vaccine came to be. What I say to those people are be concerned about the slowness of other vaccines that come to be. Because when the world is behind making a change, change could happen. And so I apologize if any of you are offended by what Manasa is saying or what I am saying, but just understand that is really how I feel. And if you don't agree with me, that doesn't mean I love you any less. So I hope that doesn't mean that you love me any less, because this is what I believe.
Well, and I can just speak as a pediatrician because that is where I come from. And so I do recommend vaccines, and I do it because everything that we do
Mhm.
is based on,
Yeah.
and what you just said about your mom and what like her experience was like. So when I was in training back in 2000, what is it? 2010,
2000, blah,
2009,
blah, blah.
attendings who trained me, right? Who have been seeing patients for the last 30 years who are much, much older. They said to me, I specifically remember this. You got working in the ER, we see children who are getting spinal taps, right? For meningitis, concerned about them. And often, like, we don't see crazy things in newborns anymore as far as infection
Yeah.
because we have vaccines. And that's what they would say. They said, you guys, this generation of doctors don't even actually realize how bad those diseases were, because that's what we used to see routinely. Like when those kids would come in, they'd be so sick. And not that we don't see sick kids now, but they're not sick from those
Yes.
particular infections. And so I think, again, um, masks and vaccines to me as a scientist and a physician are not political.
Yeah.
And I can science speaks and evidence speaks. And so
And
that's,
it's just a sore spot with me because I never want to feel judged because I don't judge. And so when
yes,
I see
exactly.
that comments are coming in and people want to judge me for my beliefs, I don't actually ever judge anybody for their beliefs. I'm just saying, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you. Just like I'm going to tell you about how to breastfeed twins, and I'm going to tell you about what you need to get before they get there. Monica's going to take care of your body. I'm hopefully going to take care of your soul a little bit. That's why we are the match made in heaven. But Monica, thank you so much for playing with us today. It's really been a very enlightening conversation for me, and yeah, we just gotta finish this up. I think we're all done. I think I'm done. But honestly, the way that I met you and the way that I fell in love with you guys and Ahimsa Home by proxy was COVID, because I value your opinion greatly as a twin mom and a pediatrician. It's fantastic to me. So thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Anytime.
Oh, anytime. It'll be in 10 minutes when I finish this video and we
But
start
yeah,
this one. That's it. All right, guys,
okay.
if you have more questions, we're going to let Manasa go for real this time. If you have more questions for me, you could email us at community@twiniversity.com. If you have any specific comments for me personally, you could email me at natalie@twiniversity.com. I welcome any and all opinions that you have about anything that I do, but just understand I do not judge anybody. And until you walk a day in anybody's shoes, nobody should be judging anybody either. So that is all I'm going to say for Twiniversity for now. Until next time, guys, we'll see you later, alligators. Thanks for watching.
Bye.